Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Takeaway Club, where I talk to interesting people across different walks of life to get to know their stories and, more importantly, how they got to where they are, including their motivations, habits, routines, and aspirations, some of which we can apply to our own lives. Hello, Baradwaj Rangan. Welcome to the Takeaway Club. Baradwaj, I want to start off with a question on interviews to begin this interview. In May 1991, ABC's John Stossel makes the statement to Howard Stern: "People despise you." And Stern replies that what I do is out there, but I know it kicks ass when I get on the radio and it makes people laugh. So he has that distinct style that is now iconic almost, right? So he prodded Madonna to reveal her relationship with Tupac Shakur. So he set up this very vulnerable environment where Paul McCartney was comfortable enough to, actually like give away that John Lennon was a big part in the Beatles splitting up. And describing to Stossel, so he goes on to say that there is something great about that, the tension, and it's very real. So if you look at it, that's what defined Howard Stern's career. So there are a lot of other examples like this, right? So Oprah is a good example where she makes people really vulnerable and comfortable, and they go on to share things that even they wouldn't have, dreamt of prior to the interview. My question to you is, what is Baradwaj Rangan saying?
I think that's more for people to say, but I would say that my MO, if you want to call it that, is basically not to deviate from the cinematic aspect of the person or the technician and the actor or the director or whoever it is. I don't go into a very personal space unless that personal space has something to do with cinema. For example, how they handle failure or success or something like that. Uh, but I don't ask, you know, jolly fun questions for the sake of, entertainment unless the situation demands it. And I think the fact that I stick to cinema and try, see, for me, the biggest interest is the process. Why do they do this? Why do they do that? Like, how do they do this? How do they act? How do they direct? How do they edit? For me, that is the biggest interest. And I'm with every interviewee. I'm not saying this to be modest, but I'm a student, because sometimes people much younger than you can teach you like much very very big things about the way they approach uh, work, and that rubs off on you. For me, the greatest learning is how various people approach cinema, and that is what I try to bring out. To I hope that my curiosity matches with the curiosity of the viewer, which is why you'll find that I don't get that many views, but at the same time I have a fairly loyal following in terms of people who love cinema, uh, and like cinema. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm glad you brought up, like, I don't get a lot of views as well. So
No,
yeah.
I mean, I do get views, but I'm not like the
Very
you know
good.
the the 5 million, 10 million kind
The
of things.
flashy YouTubers. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For the time being, I want to take you back to 1980s or could be late 70s when you were growing up. So you grew up in an era where the choices in terms of what you can consume was very limited as such. So Bruce Lee has this very popular quote like, "I fear not the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." So in a lot of ways, for somebody who grew up in that environment, in that era, you got just that, right? So there were so few distractions and practically no choice. So whatever you had to consume, there's that sincerity and dedication to just the consumption because you don't have any other
Yeah.
choice. I feel like in a way that has made your work today a lot easier because you grew up in that environment, but you come back and apply all of your learnings in an era which doesn't demand any of that from its consumer. Do you feel like that has given you some kind of edge as a creator?
Definitely, because see, the thing is, when we are when there's too much choice, we like today, for instance, I'll take the example of music, right? Today, if I'm a Rahman fan or an Anirudh fan or a whatever fan, Santosh Narayanan fan or something, I can just go and listen to the songs that I like. I'll be completely unaware of what else is there. Whereas when I was growing up, we had programs on TV that showed film songs, and we had the radio. So that was not under our control. So when that is how I'm I'm from the Ilayaraja generation, but I'm not from the MSV generation. But I know so much about MSV and the songs simply because I got a lot of them through this cultural osmosis, which was happening then. Because everybody listened to things together. If there was a radio, then everybody listened to it together. Today, everybody in a house is in their own corners with their own headphones, doing earphones, listening to what they like or what they want to do. So there's a certain collective cultural osmosis that happened back then, and I think that really really helped in building a solid base. And it happened in terms of movies also, because in Sunday afternoons, Doordarshan used to show art films from other languages. We used to see, like I was, see today, if you ask somebody to voluntarily watch an art film, if I had been, 15 years old today, and somebody asked me to voluntarily watch an art film, I probably wouldn't, because, I'd probably go for something entertaining. But back then, when you love cinema, but this is what they're showing, you sit there, and when these rhythms get into you at a very early age, it becomes much easier to appreciate. On the one hand, you're watching Kamal, Rajni, Vijay, Satyaraj, Dharmendra, Amitabh Bachchan movies. On the other hand, you're watching Shyam Benegal, Nasiruddin Shah, Om Puri, this kind of movies. So I think both kind of assimilate into your system. And so I think the lack of choice was actually the biggest boon. And then I joined the Chennai Film Society, where I started watching foreign films. And then in the USIS, they started, screening. They would screen old Hollywood classics and all that, and I watched that. And so I sought out films that I wanted to watch. But again, I didn't have control over what films they would show. So I would just show up every Wednesday evening. There used to be a show. I'll go there, and whichever movie they showed, I would see it, whether I was bored or not, whether I was. So that is how I think you really develop an eclectic taste. Otherwise, what happens today is I think people, because they can choose what they want to watch, they or listen to or whatever it is, I think they lose out on things that might be there.
Yeah, so that's so true. The osmosis element is it's almost out of our vocabulary in this generation, because we are all hooked to our own cell phones, and you live in a bubble there. So how has your work evolved? So from the time that you actually consume this content, so you spent a lot of time in print media, and then now you are doing with YouTube, which is like, it's not even media, right? It's new media. And I specifically want to touch on two aspects here. So, one, as the artist, so as somebody who has gotten this opportunity, and like, all the college that come with it, like getting to blog, or getting to go to the Cannes Festival, or venturing into screenplay. So, this is your evolution, as the artist here. And as the student of the craft, so what are some of the visible differences in your style? So how you used to prepare for an interview, say in 2005 or 6, versus how you do now. Maybe it could be something like you are more comfortable taking vocal stances in something which you were, okay with being just politically correct at early stage in your career. Give me some examples of how Baradwaj Rangan has evolved.
That's very tough to say, because I think the because I'm interested in the process, and that has been my interest from day one. I don't think that has changed at all. I don't think that process has changed at all. That interest in the process has not changed at all. Second thing is about preparation. Earlier, I used to prepare a lot, but now I kind of vaguely have an outline or a sketch, because I kind of want the energy of the person to kind of also reflect in the interview, rather than me directing it throughout. That's kind of what it is. Third is I have gotten more comfortable. Earlier, if an interview didn't go well, or if I didn't get what I just, it would be I would be crushed by it. Now I think I'm used to the fact that some interviews are going to go well, some interviews are not going to go well. You just get, a law of averages, so you kind of get used to that fact. And fourth is, I think, the most important thing for me personally is that I have never believed in recommending a film. I have never done that from day one. I have always analyzed a film rather than recommend it, which is why some people kind of come away from my reviews and say, "What is this guy saying? Is he saying go to the film or not go to the film?" And that's not my interest at all, because I don't know what's your taste, and I don't think I'm qualified to tell you whether you should go and watch the film or not. But at the same time, earlier I used to, if a film was really bad, I used to kind of write a little trollishly, sarcastically. Now I don't do that unless the film is really, really bad. Simply because as you go into an industry, so I think especially the smaller films, if they turn out to be bad, I either tell the directors that, listen, my review is going to be bad, so if you don't want, I'm not going to publish a review. If they still insist, then I go ahead and write a review. But I say it doesn't work, rather than this is such a fucked up movie or something like that. Whereas the big movies are fair game, because if you have, I don't know, so many crores, and you still make a shit movie, that's fair game. That I don't mind, being a little harsh on. But the smaller movies, I've realized there's no point in really thing, because it's so difficult to make a movie in the first place. That is younger filmmakers. I kind of don't. If it's going to be a negative review, I tell them that I'd rather not do this. Uh, uh, but if they say no, 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 do it, even if it's negative, we want to see what you have to say. Or if they say that at least it'll give the movie some publicity and people will know that the movie's out there. So I do it, but I do it in a fairly, I wouldn't say politically correct tone, because I'm still saying that it's not a good movie, but I'm not saying it in a trollish way.
Anything that has like you can say it has gotten easier over the years, but this aspect of my job has gotten much tougher as the years are went by.
I think it's mainly the attention span, because I like to kind of let the interview decide the flow of the interview and the time of the interview, because if it's going well, I don't like to cut them off. But at the same time, you realize that today's attention span is kind of, people don't like to watch, because I always keep telling people, instead of complaining that an interview is 1 hour, watch it at 1.5 speed or whatever it is. It's like you just want the content, right? It's like it's not a movie. So if it's played at 1.5 speed, or depending on how the person speaks, 2x or whatever, it's 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. So it's not that much of an effort, I feel. But I think that is the biggest challenge for anybody creating content today, is to hold on to a viewer, or a listener. That I think, because some people listen to my interviews as they're doing chores, driving, things like that. So I think that's
So when you talk about attention span, so it's in the other side of the spectrum where you have like went ahead and published an interview. But in your case, about 15 years back, you had like one good weekend. Say you, I think if I'm not mistaken, what your workflow used to be, you watched a movie on Thursday evening or Friday evening, where you had the next 2 days, and it didn't require you to come back with the review until Saturday night. Now, I would assume that the time that you get to prepare and put out an interview itself would have become much shorter. So, how do you still like ensure that you have like the same quality standards that you set yourself to, like when you had much longer prep time?
uh, it's tough. I think you, because I think it is a cinema is like any other subject. It's like, I don't know, physics or maths or whatever it is. So it requires a certain specialization, and once the more time you spend with it, the better you get. So there is it becomes a little easier to kind of uh, prepare for an interview, because you by this time I kind of know many people, because I've interviewed them at least once or twice, so I kind of know what they're going to be like, how they would like to be, how their answers are going to be. So I can kind of I know the personalities and how they, which is a little, the first time you're interviewing anybody is a little nerve wracking, because you don't know their energy, you don't know what they're like, you don't know what it's going to be like, kind of a thing. But over time, when you become familiar, you can kind of take, it becomes a little easier for you, because you're kind of thing. And like I said, I always try to do something. Like recently, I interviewed Mani Ratnam for Ponniyin Selvan, and I tried to keep the Ponniyin Selvan questions to a minimum. I instead talked about his process, which is what I want. I'm always interested in, because a lot of people are talking about Ponniyin Selvan. They don't need another one about Ponniyin Selvan. Like, so the idea is also to anticipate what other people are going to ask, and which could become cliches by the time your interview comes out, and therefore try to kind of form a set of points that you think are going to stand out, or at least be of interest for the people who are interested in cinema.
Yeah, so I think if I could sum up what you said, so while the prep time might have gotten less, now you have a lot more context and you're equipped with a skill set wherein now you can use your knowledge and you can how you see things to still stand out.
Yeah.
I went through like a lot of things that you've written about or you've spoken about. But one part that I found I would have liked to, see or hear from you more was what are some of the adversities that Baradwaj Rangan faced? It could be like it doesn't even have to be like catastrophic, right? So you had like a cushy job in the US, you left that and came at a time wherein film critic wasn't really mainstream. If anything, you probably were one of the few people to pioneer it here. So what are some of the challenges there? Or it could be like you could have interviewed a person where you might have intended something, but they took it in a very different way that kind of escalated things that really you look back and wow, I learned something there today which I still look back and I use it to get going.
I think when I look back, I don't know. I don't think I don't know the adversities when you talk about it. I think the main thing, I don't know if I'd call it adversity. I think the only real adversity was whether I would make it or not. Because whenever anybody tries to do something different, you get to that fork in the road, and there's either the safe path or the untried path. And when you choose the untried path, you could, let's say you're trying to become a cricketer, or let's say you're trying to become a musician, or whatever it is, a photographer, or whatever it is. All these are what I call unsafe paths, because you, if you're an IT guy, then your growth chart is pretty much guaranteed. With all this, forget growth chart, you don't even know if you're going to make it. Forget Indian cricketing, you may not even make it to the Ranji level, even though you're a really good cricketer. It doesn't matter what your quality. There's a lot of factors that kind of play into it, timing and things like that. So I think the only real adversity was waiting it out till I made it. I think that was the uncertain part. Everything else has been very manageable in terms of, like, for example, the shift from print to digital initially was a very nerve-wracking thing, but slowly, I stopped being less conscious, and it became easier. So all those kinds of things. So I would say, but really, if you talk about adversity, the only real thing is the will I make it, or I've been trying to do this. Will this happen for me? That was the only real adversity. Yeah.
So going back to like perhaps the first question that I asked, where we were talking about popular YouTubers, and I think I personally like put you in the category of a more niche creator, right? Even within Tamil cinema, where you might have a smaller, it ferociously loyal set of following. Do you ever wish like you were more mainstream, wherein anybody from Tamil Nadu could come in and watch your interview and still be able to appreciate it the way your fans do?
I don't think so, because see, first of all, you have to understand one thing, and I'm not being snobbish about this, but to most people, films are a generic entertainment medium. It is not an art form. So they want entertainment, and they want entertainment in the movies, and they want entertainment in the interviews. So let's say a celebrity couple is talking about how the husband, doesn't eat much, or the wife says, he's never got me a sari, or whatever it is. That is very interesting to them, because they're getting an internal peek into the private lives of public people. And this is not true just of India. This is true the world over. Now, because I don't go there, and again, there's no judgment here at all, because everybody has to do what comes easily to them, and that's not easy to do that kind of interview either. But because of my view of cinema, there are a lot of people who kind of who stay away, because they don't look at cinema so deeply. Again, I'm not saying that therefore they're, it's they just it's there, everybody, right? It's like it's just how you deal with something. Like I might not look at some other subjects so deeply, or whatever it is. So it's like, so that's the real thing that happens. It's so I everybody wants more eyeballs, more audience, and all that, but you should also never forget the core that defines you. And you cannot be another person just because somebody else is popular. That what interests you, what brought you to this place. And see, when I mean, I don't get numbers, I only mean the numbers that certain people get.
Relatively,
Yeah, but I still get, like, 300K, 400K, 500K views, which is not a terrible number. It's a good number. But that's the difference. So to over the years, to even gather enough of a crowd to watch this content, I think has been satisfying. You just have to have a niche. Have to have a reason people come and say, I want to see this person's thing. That niche could be anything. It could be you're a very funny interviewer, you're a very serious interviewer, you're a cinema well, you're good at reading people and getting them to say private, like you said, Howard Stern, you're good at getting them to confess things. That if you have a niche, people will come to you.
So I had one question which you probably get asked a lot of times. How do you go about critiquing a film in which you are fans of certain filmmakers? In your case, like Mani Ratnam is a very good example of a director whom you resonate with, be it his movies, or it could be just that both of you view cinema in a very similar lens.
See, there is no such thing as objective reviewing, because every reviewing is a matter of taste. Every reviewer brings his or her taste to the table. So there is no such thing as like you can't say it. The sky is blue is an objective statement. This film is good is not an objective statement. This film is good according to me is what you're really saying. So that is not, there is no such thing as objective film reviewing. Second thing, there is bias, but there is something called internal bias and something called external bias. Internal bias is your own taste. I like the way Mani Ratnam stages his scenes. I like the way Gautam Menon stages his scenes. I like the way Mishkin stages his scenes. For me, the craft is very, very important. Form is very, very important. And I'm not a big content guy. I don't care if they say the same story, but how are they using the medium of cinema? Karthik Subraj, all these people for me are very, very like people who are favorites for me. And for me, when so my internal bias, that is my taste, tends towards filmmakers who use the medium a certain way. I don't care about filmmakers who give messages or this or that about it in a very obvious way. If they use craft, well, that is different. But Paranjit is a fantastic example of a filmmaker whose films have a message, but also he covers this fantastic craft in that film. Now, you should make sure that you can never really eliminate internal bias, because that is taste. It's like saying that if you're a food critic, you are going to like certain cuisines better than other cuisines. But you should have a tolerance for all cuisines. And you should have a knowledge of all cuisines. As long as there is no external bias, in the sense that I am not saying a movie is good because Mani Ratnam made it or because Gautam made it. For example, Gautam always keeps teasing me that yeah, I know Achaman, but the Madhavana didn't work for you. Mani Ratnam, I didn't like Chakachavandavanam at all. It became one of his big hits. And he told me, that please give bad reviews to my movies, because every time you give a bad review to a movie, it becomes a big hit. So, so these are all people who take their, like criticism well, because they're all after, they like the art, that is why they're there. So, for me, as long as there is no external bias, as long as I'm not liking a film because a certain person has made it, that's the only thing that matters.
Just going back to Mani Ratnam, you were in awe of how Mani Ratnam is able to write for characters like Divya, Shakti, or Tara when it's nowhere near his generation, right? So, in some ways, I think the same question can be, asked to you as well. This again goes back to your pressing example as well. So whether you are talking to a Lokesh Kanagaraj or Mani Ratnam or somebody like Mishkin, there are interviews that you have a lot in common, but there are interviews you feel like you're hitting a dead end. But you still have to. The part of your job is you still have to go ahead and publish that. How do you make it work?
That's what I said earlier. It's like you have to understand that the connect could not happen for several reasons. One is maybe you're not on the same wavelength. Second thing is maybe they just had a night shoot and they're so tired and they don't want to answer like very processy questions. They just want a light interview. There could be several reasons. So you have to be prepared for, some interviews are going to be good, some interviews are not going to be good. So I don't think you can beat yourself up over it. And as long as you've done your job, you've prepared and you've gone the, like I said, again, that's a process. The process is everything. The result is not under your control.
So just going back to that question, so one is like not vibing at all. Another is each director has their own distinct style. So Lokesh probably likes to talk a lot more about lights and the night setting, compared with Mani Ratnam, who likes to talk more about the characters. So you yourself might be well equipped to have some conversations, but not so much with others. So does your preparation change in any way?
No, again, see, it's like I said, it's the preparation is about the process. So you kind of try and get at the root of how, like for example, I recently interviewed somebody who had made a movie in English, an Indian, and for me the important thing was how they wrote the dialogues in a way that would reflect the fact that this Indian English thing is happening. So that's what I'm saying. The process is based on the context also, which film you're going and how that thing relates back to their earlier work and so on and so forth. So I don't think otherwise is there's a special process for people, that because you can't predict beforehand how an interview is going to go. You just go in hoping for the best. Sometimes you go in preparing and then you realize that the actor has come in late, so you were promised a 45 minutes interview, but then you were given only like 15 minutes or something like that. What do? You just have to make the best of it. So
I want to talk about like the landscape of movie industry in the next 5, 10 years. What are some of the innovations that you think is going to get more mainstream? And we leave out like the usual ones, right? Like OTTs, or let's say more directors having their own distinct styles instead of making generic movies. So I'll give you an example from the tech industry. So there is this person, Balaji Srinivasan. So one of the smartest gentlemen in tech, and he's a partner at one of the biggest VC firms in the world. And he recently published a book called The Network State. And
okay,
beauty of the book is it's an ebook which he intends to keep updating every time he feels like his view about the subject has changed. So it's not a completed book that is shipped and that is it. So he just is going to continue working on the book for years to come. I thought it was mind blowing. It's very simple when you look at it, but nobody has ever thought of that when publishing a book. So, what is something that you want to see in the 5-10 years in the industry?
I think people I just want to see more directors who use cinema as a medium and not just as a storytelling device, because just like prose is different from poetry, you every both prose and poetry use words, but prose is different and poetry is different. They have their own form, so which is why you call somebody a writer and somebody a poet. Similarly, not everybody who writes a screenplay is a director. Like, yes, like a good director also uses the screenplay, a bad director also uses the screenplay, but the point is a bad director stops the screenplay and doesn't know how to stage scenes. What I would like to see is more directors using the medium the way it is meant to be used, with a knowledge of how to place the camera and things like that. And I would also like people at a level where they can actually engage with it instead of just randomly comment saying things like screenplay is good, editing is bad, and things like that. So, I mean, if you're just going to say I like the movie, I didn't like the movie, that's different. But when you get specific about it, I would like them to really know what they're talking about rather than.
So, what are your dreams, like personally as a professional in the?
For me, a great inspiration is Roger Ebert. He kept working till the end. That's what one wishes to do. Whether I can do or how the media, but then Ebert is also lucky because he lived in an age where there were just 2 or 3 mediums. So he was in print, and then there was television, and that's pretty much it. But now there's like a zillion different things. Some people are on Insta, some people are on different things. So I think try and last out each technological upheaval, and kind of do that. So
Hey, since you brought up Ebert, I think you are probably the most qualified person that I can ask this question to. Usual Suspects, did it work for you or not?
a lot. I love that movie.
I just had to ask. So that's all the questions that I had. At the takeaway club, towards the end, I do this thing called random deck where the questions are not really timed. So it's just your rapid fire, which is
Okay.
the cliche, but you have to have it. What is an absolute non-negotiable for you in life?
A non-negotiable thing. To do thing without interest or passion.
At the press of a button, you could call yourself as the director of that movie. Which movie would you want to be associated with? Like
Godfather. Because it set the tone for the second movie, and it basically treated a gangster saga like a family movie, and I think it's one of the greatest films ever made.
Who's the biggest inspiration for you in life, but that you have never really admitted to?
This is not a politically incorrect correct answer, but for me, I'm inspired by everything. I'm inspired by anybody who has something that I don't have, and it's a positive quality. I'm inspired by that because I really believe in positivity and positive energies. So I'm really, really inspired by anybody that goes after something, or is determined, or achieve something, or something like that. Which is why I'm always reading books about people, or rather articles about people who are big achievers, their habits, their how they do things, and things like that. So that maybe at least some of it can rub off on me. And it could be younger people, it could be older people, but really I can't think of one. There are just so many. So
what would number 1, 2, 3 be outside of movies?
Oh God, this is very difficult. Rafael Nadal, because I really like the way he just never gives up. Chetan Bhagat, because of the way he opened up English language writing to an entire non-elitist crowd, and therefore made it much more accessible for other people to kind of a thing. I mean, you may or may not like his writing, but I'm just talking about what he did. Number 3, I don't know. Let's go with just 2. Yeah.
That's a combination I honestly wouldn't have thought to be put together in any scenario.
Any scenario, yeah.
So now that you've been here, you've talked to me, you've known me for 45 minutes, but still, based on what you have seen, who's somebody that hey, if I could nominate this person that I know to come and have a chat with this guy, who would that person be for you?
Yeah, he's a very very good critic, and he really gets film and he feels film, and I think he'd be an interesting person to interview. Yeah.
Thank you, Baradwaj. Thank you for taking the time. I've been in awe of your work, and to get a chance to put you in front of a microphone and just an uninterrupted hour or so to hear you talk about those things that I admire. I think it's truly a privilege. So thanks for making this happen.
Thank you, and all the best.
Hey there, so that wraps up a conversation that I absolutely enjoyed recording, and I hope you did too. If that's the case, kindly consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts, which will help the Takeaway Club find new like minded people like you. Also, consider subscribing to the Takeaway Club. So, we are at the takeaway dot club as well as the takeaway club dot substack dot com. Just hit the subscribe button, it's free, and you'll get all the latest episodes and other articles that I'm working on straight to your inbox. Have a great day ahead. Thank you once again for tuning in to the Takeaway Club.